So I was watching Friday the 13th, part 6, the other day.
Which one is part 6?
Jason... Oh, no. I always get that confused. In my mind, part 6 is Jason Lives.
That's the New Beginning, isn't it?
Part 7 is Jason Lives. Part 6,
right.
You're right, is New Beginning, which... That's not the one I watched. I watched Jason Lives.
Okay, all right.
An all-time classic. An all-time classic of the series. It's no Jason Takes Manhattan.
Well, no, but what is?
But what is, yeah. Now, I've always had a fondness for Jason Lives.
Yeah.
I had a photo taken with the guy that played Jason in that one, not Kane Hodder, it was CJ something. It was awesome, because they don't tell you what he's going to do. But what he does is you go up to take your photo, he grabs you by the collar, drags you towards him, lifts up his machete, and they snap a picture right when you're about to shit yourself. Brilliant. But having grown up with that film, because I had neglectful parents, so I've been watching that film since I was about 4, and I have never had a problem with it. It was my introduction to the series. I've always been sort of, like I say, I've had a fondness for it. It's when the series started to try and do comedy in its own special way.
Right.
So yeah, fascinating film. However, for the first time watching it, I was actually a bit offended this time.
Ooh.
Yeah, I felt kind of disappointed that I never noticed it before, but this is right at the end of the film. Right? After a sort of really interesting sort of, I say interesting, very silly kind of B-movie slasher thing. Tommy Jarvis, sort of on-again, off-again protagonist, lures Jason Voorhees out to Crystal Lake, right? Mm-hmm. Taunting him and all of that. And what they do is they put a chain on him with a rock and essentially, re-drown him. And I sat there, after having watched this for decades, and for the first time in my life, I just thought, you know what? Murder is never okay. What they did to Jason is not cool, and I don't condone it. Murder, listeners, is not okay.
Never okay.
It's never okay. Regardless of how many people Jason may have killed in his storied career, being Jason.
Sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly.
Hey,
the number of deaths on his hands is no factor.
Jason's not the one we're choosing to put on trial here. Come on now. Hey, come on. If it is found that Jason is guilty of anything, then we might dedicate a paragraph to that at some point. But the takeaway here is that a man died. Come on. Sort it out.
Let's go.
Oh, God. This is unimportant, but I can't stop thinking about the fact that someone pointed out to me today there is an official shirt you can purchase from Nintendo's online store that says you just got Luigi'd.
Oh.
And that I've not been able to stop thinking about it since.
That's like me and Edward James Olmos. I can't stop thinking about Edward James Olmos. I don't know if you know this about me, Laura.
It's true.
Just the other day, I imagined him calling himself. He calls himself it, right? Fried egg Gucci shoes. And yeah. He walks around, right, with fried eggs in his shoes. Walks around all day like that. Goes home, scoops out the scramblies, and then rubs them on his perineum. No, I don't know why he does it either.
I'm sure learning things today.
I think basically what I think Edward James almost did there, right, was he said words without thinking about them, right?
And
that
then, can happen.
Yeah, and then sort of desperately tried to contrive what the words in that particular order might have meant.
Right.
In the vague some would say futile hopes that it might lead to some entertainment.
Well, I think it comes down to the perineum being a particularly good place to absorb things into the bloodstream because of the capillary concentration in the area. And Edward James Olmos is probably seeking to gain eternal life by using the raw power of an embryo,
strong,
which,
healthy.
Right, what an egg is, but, see, does not want to cross the line into some sort of ghoulish human embryonic experiment.
Of course.
Right, because he's not a monster, right? He just wants to live forever.
Well, other people have made that fatal mistake, and he's not going to do it. Also, while we round out like some of the personal news and while we're talking about current events, I do just want to confirm that yes, I am going ahead with the lawsuit against EMF. Having found out who that song was passively aggressively about, I can prove that I am actually believable, and I'm not going to take that slander anymore.
Now, see, before we get into all the main stuff of the week, I did have an admittance I wanted to bring to the show this week.
Sure, yeah. Let me just check. All of my brilliant bangers are done.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, here's my brilliant banger of the week.
Oh, take us home.
So I'm sorry to let you both know this is going to be hard news to accept, but I have in the past played a assassination tutorial video game that taught me how to kill people and then hide and get away with it and lie about having done it. So it's somewhat of a tutorial on how to do a murder and then pretend I didn't do it.
Well, this is deeply upsetting for me to hear.
Yeah. Honestly, like, I'm not going to use the word ashamed, but I'll at least you're coming clean.
Look, I feel like I saw some coverage by the New York Post that said that Among Us is an assassin simulator.
Yeah.
And I did realize I have played Among Us. I'm really sorry. I cannot promise I won't go out and commit a murder and then try and run away and hide the fact that I did it by hiding saying I was in electronics doing engineering.
Honestly, transparency is key. Like, just don't try and bury this, Laura, because that's only going to make it worse.
Right.
Leave it in the middle of a street in New York rather than bury it, I just want to, on that note as well, want to let everyone know that I had nothing to do with the Among Us DLC on Vampire Survivors. In fact, to date, I've only been accused of terrorism once by SoundCloud a few days ago.
Oh, God, yes.
I forgot, until you mentioned the word terrorist, Laura, I forgot that basically... you know what? I know that we've been doing pre-game shenags for a little bit.
We've had a lot of fun.
I do feel like I should read out what I said to SoundCloud, because I'm very proud of it.
Yeah.
So, right. So basically, you may have noticed, if for some reason you thought to yourself, oh, I want to listen to an old spin-off Doctors podcast.
Or if you were listening to this feed and suddenly a spin-off Doctors episode popped up into it, because apparently that did happen for people.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Well, you may wonder what that's about. So a couple of years ago, we were talking about like 5 years ago now, Conrad and I, on this very podcast feed, did our spin-off Doctors podcast that is still running.
Still going. Still an ongoing concern. Yep.
An ongoing concern. I like that. We did a podcast. You can listen to it on this very feed on Blood Rain, the Third Reich, the third film in the Uwe Boll adaptation of the Terminal Reality games. We've done them all.
Yep.
And it's been up there for, like I say, about 5 years, so I was quite surprised to get an email from SoundCloud support, saying that your content on SoundCloud has been found to be in breach of our terms of use on the grounds of containing illegal or extremist content. The content being, apparently, that entire episode. They're a little bit...
And only that episode.
Only that episode, yeah. They are a little bit more informative than YouTube.com, because YouTube will take down your stuff and accuse you of all sorts without giving you any clue. Whereas they gave me a pretty, let's say, wide perimeter to try and explore within. They gave me the relevant parts of the terms of use.
Oh.
Parts 8 and 9. Which are, you must not use the platform to upload, post, store, transmit, display, copy, distribute, promote, make available, continue to make available, or otherwise communicate to the public any content that breaches our community guidelines and includes terrorist or extremist content. Which...
Is it just the word Reich?
Well, yes. Well, they've not told me, but they have said, as per Article 9, that I must not commit, engage, and encourage blah, 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 give rise to civil liability or otherwise violate any law or regulation. So, the content was removed. I was given an incredibly vague, let's call it what it is, allegation. An allegation of terrorism was levelled against me, or at the very least extremist criminality, and there's nothing I've ever said on this podcast that would condone anything of that nature. So I sent them back an email, quite confused, that read, "Hello, darling. I'm rather confused, as the removed content is a movie review. Without the provision of specific evidence of criminality, I can only assume for now that the episode title got it flagged. As a matter of important context, the movie we reviewed is legitimately called Blood Rain: The Third Reich. I acknowledge that purchasing and watching this film could constitute abuse on par with a human rights violation, but I would argue any deleterious impact was self-inflicted. Further, the torment in question was not portrayed directly, only reported after the fact. We in no way seek to glorify, condone, or otherwise encourage the act of watching Blood Rain: The Third Reich, starring Natasha Malf with a special appearance by Clint Howard. If there is any specific material within the podcast that violates your terms of use, please do let me know, as accusations of criminal and or terrorist behaviour are quite serious and would necessitate a hands-on investigation of myself that could result in my discharge. Fondest nuzzles, Stephanie Sterling." They got back to me after that and just said, "No, it seems your podcast's fine, mate."
Oh, huh. Fancy that.
Yeah. I mean, fair play to them for absolutely no selling what I sent to them. But, that's tempered by the fact that they didn't even confirm if it was the title. I guess because, quite clearly...
That would be embarrassing and
embarrassing, and, I made it quite clear that I take it as an implication of an allegation.
Yeah.
Which it is. Let's
yes.
be honest. I understand that SoundCloud, if you didn't know, is the company's based in Germany. Mm-hmm. So, them being particularly sensitive to potential references... anything that might potentially support Nazis.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, but the problem is when you clearly use algorithms, as these content platforms do, if you're using algorithms to moderate all of your content in a scattershot approach, you do end up accidentally accusing someone of terrorism.
And it's one of those things that's been there for 5 years, right? And so now it draws attention to the fact that all of a sudden SoundCloud has a lot of interest in checking to see if there are any terrorists on their platform, and I wonder why that is.
Yeah.
And I will say, to your note of the problems that can come when you leave AI to try and work out if infringing content exists, the other thing you might see happen that was a gaming-related thing this week was itch.io got taken offline for a little while.
Yes.
Because the creators of Funko Pops, they've got a little AI that goes looking for infringing data that decided to take down all of it.
Oh, while we're being very legally careful about this, I do want to just add a little correction for you, Laura.
Yeah.
Calling them the creators of Funko when they don't create jack shit could open us up to slander allegations. But yeah, I do think it's particularly gross that a platform built around innovation and creativity was taken down. by the Funko people.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's the same thing. I thought that when because I was talking about that earlier this week, the Funko thing, and that ties into when SoundCloud accused me of doing a terrorism, and what YouTube's done for nigh on 10 years.
Terrorism?
Terrorism, yeah. It's worth noting that the AI that Funko has been using to protect its brand is functionally no different than the algorithms that trawl YouTube for supposed content copyright violations. And the problems we're seeing, the problem we just saw with Funko and Itch, are the exact same problems I voiced with YouTube's content moderation in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is it the same stuff, not only has it like, it's not improved is the thing. It is the exact same scattergun with the exact same level of accuracy that it's always had. There have been no developments. There have been no improvements.
But don't worry. AI is gonna, like, oh my god, it's gonna change everything.
Right?
Don't
the
worry.
machine is learning.
It's getting better. It's gonna keep getting better, gang. We promise.
10 years of it, and everything I've said about its inability to understand context and how that is the crucial problem with AI.
Yeah.
It's only ever been solidified as an argument.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that so-called machine learning clearly hasn't learned enough to stop doing this, but to do it with the exact same frequency, if not an increase. Come on. Funko didn't say sorry, by the way. They wrote a lot of words in response, and I looked over them with a fine-tooth comb, and at no point do they actually say sorry.
We were just trying to take down one page, and a person looked it over, and it's undone now.
And this needs to stop. Like, this is why I wanted to, like, as funny as it is, it's why I keep coming back to SoundCloud accused me of terrorism. Because shrugging this off at this point is becoming too good for them. It's too lax. This keeps happening, and we've become so numb to it that we're just used to them not apologizing.
Well, and that's what allows them to keep pushing further.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
You know,
you give them an inch, they'll take a country.
We're the frog in the pot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, while I don't like that as a political analogy, and don't think it's accurate there in circumstances like this. It's a good illustration. And yeah, that's what's going on. We're just accepting it because we don't have a choice either.
I
That's
think
the other thing.
Tamagotchi's dying.
It's like the American healthcare system in a way. Like, we hate it. We all hate it. We all know it's deeply flawed and resulting in incredible deleterious effects. However, it is seen as necessary because it's managed to insert itself into the process.
Do you know what's funny? As you said that, not the American healthcare system, obviously, that's a ghoulish nightmare. Literally, as you were saying that, my Tamagotchi was dying. I'm still on my Tamagotchi bullshit.
No.
But an ambulance turned up, took it to the hospital, and fixed it for free.
Well, that's good.
As you were talking about that,
that's good.
Yeah, I was getting an
that.
example of how it should be done. From a small child's toy that's being operated by a 40-year-old who should have better things to do. So, yeah, that's game related, by the way, because I am still on Tamagotchi bullshit. That's one of the things.
Speaking of games 20 minutes in,
what?
I played some of those this week.
How?
I don't know, I used my hands and looked at them.
Oh, no, that checks out. Tell us about them then, please.
Fuck it, I'm going to talk about a thing I played a little bit of this morning that is new and that I'm pretty into so far. I have been playing Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Rita's Rewind, which is a newly released side-scrolling beat-em-up Power Rangers video game that has just come out. And I've got to boot up my Switch because I need to read to you some dialogue from early in that game to give you a sense of the tone that it is trying to strike. Because this is clearly a video game made for people who, like me, 30 years ago in the early 90s were watching Power Rangers and are now 30 years older and a lot more aware of quite how fucking ridiculous original series Power Rangers was.
Yeah.
So here is some dialogue from the opening bit of plot of the game. Teleport us 5 overbearing and over-emotional humans.
Excellent.
No Zordon, not that, not teenagers.
Excellent.
This is the tone of how it starts. The plot is basically, after 30 years of Rita Repulsa failing to defeat the Power Rangers, she basically invents a time machine as a robotic, barely still existent version of herself to go back to the past and destroy the Power Rangers right at the beginning when they're just being formed, with 30 years of knowledge of how to defeat them. Now do a little side-scrolling beat-em-up.
Holy shit, this looks great.
Right? The visual look of it is great. It's got some gorgeous pixel art animation to it. But the thing that really stands out about this is not the side-scrolling beat-em-up content, which is it is good. It feels really good to play. There are Mode 7 style pseudo 3D sections.
I was watching a trailer while you were talking, and that was what made me have to exclaim. Oh my god.
This is the bit that goes, you're not just trying to cash in on this is a recognizable thing, you're putting it into a genre people tend to play. You've got creative shit going on here. So, for example, in the first batch of 4 levels, I had regular side-scrolling beat-em-up stage, boss fight stage, side-scrolling beat-em-up still. Then I had a behind-the-character, sort of like a Star Fox level, where I was piloting one of the Megazords. I wasn't flying up in the air, but I could aim my reticle at things in the air. Automatically driving forward, I could control my driving left and right, and was trying to do shooting incoming sort of bullet hell enemies that were coming my way as I went through this lengthy stage. And then all the Megazord sort of combined together, and then it became a first-person punch-out in my giant robot against the monster that had been made giant. Across 4 stages, this happened. The 3D sections are fucking good.
Yeah, it looks beautiful.
They don't feel nearly as janky as I expected them to, as something thrown in as a side stage in a side-scrolling beat-em-up. I'm having a lot of fun with this so far. It is a solid side-scrolling beat-em-up with some inventive, feels nostalgic for a time period 3D stuff that plays a lot more smoothly than something of that era of 3D would have done.
Yeah, it looks great.
I've not had a lot of time to play it. I've played maybe an hour and a half of it this morning. I'm really digging it. And it's doing enough to be tongue-in-cheek aware of the kind of cheesy nature of Power Rangers and having some fun with that in a way that I've appreciated a lot. I don't have a lot more to say about it right now other than go watch footage of it. The 3D stuff got me interested. Playing it, it plays well. Yeah. And I'm going to stick with this for a bit.
I might get it. I've never been a big fan of Power Rangers. When it first came to the UK, I did watch a fair bit of it and quite liked it. And my brother had the Megazord and everything. I liked it enough to catch it if it was on. But that was about it.
Yeah, this requires no existing knowledge, but it does play up the really campy, this is a bit cheesy, but we're running with it villainy.
It's one of those things that landed at just the wrong time for me. Because I was, I think, 12, when it really started to hit in the United States. And it's just at the edge of the range for, I think, being interested in it.
I was just young enough to want to try imitating the fighting I was seeing on TV, and my parents to have the conversation of whether I was allowed to watch it. It hit at the exact right time for me.
Yeah, because I had friends who were a year or two younger who were really into it, and it just didn't grip me. But, yeah.
But yeah, this is a fun little side-scrolling beat-em-up. It's got co-op. I've not had a chance to try the co-op yet, but I'm excited to do so.
I reckon I'm going to get it, because Like that, I've got just enough nostalgia there. Is Bolts and Skulls in it or not?
Oh, they are in it.
Obviously they are. Silly question. I'm sold.
I defeated the first big boss and then went back to a little hub area and went and had a chat with Bulk and Skull, and it played the Bulk and Skull bumbling around music.
That was my next question. Does it go...
Right? Yeah. It plays a little 8-bit version of the Bulk and Skull music while Skull talks about how Bulk wasn't around, but Skull definitely was the one who made the big monster run away by telling him off. And that's definitely what happened, very confidently.
Mate, you've sold me on this.
Yeah. What about you both? What have you been playing this week?
I have a gripe.
Oh.
About Satisfactory.
Okay.
A game that I have been playing now for years.
Yeah.
And I was in the settings. I was fiddling around in the settings. And look, okay, I think we all agree about the importance of accessibility features, right?
Yeah.
And the need to do them right. And, you know, it's important that we, when things we like, do something just wrong from that standpoint, even though they meant well. You know, we need to call them out on it.
Yeah, all the more important. Call out the things you love the most, because they're the things you want to see do better.
So there's an arachnophobia mode in Satisfactory, which there's only like 3 types of creatures in the world that are aggressive in any way, and one of them is a little spidery thing, or in some cases a very big spidery thing. You know, and they're not quite spiders, but they've got long, pointy legs, and they scurry, and you could, you know, they're gonna give you that ick if you have arachnophobia. So it makes sense to have a mode that removes them, and I 100% support that. They also make, like, chittering, hissing noises that are, just unpleasant. What they chose to do to address this is replace all of the spidery enemies with cat pictures.
Yeah.
Flat
JPEGs of cat faces.
JPEGs of cat faces. And there are different ones depending on the size of your spider. And they now make little mewing noises as they move about. And maybe they make some other noise when you hit them. I don't know. I've never hit one. Because the moment they became cats, now what the fuck am I supposed to do? Be violent towards a cat? You have put me in a terrible position, Satisfactory. I've made the enemies all passive now. Because that's the only other alternative. Is, you know, you can hurt cats, or you could just not fight enemies. And the worst part of it, the thing that irritates me the most, is killing the creatures in the game leaves you with a resource that you can refine into protein. You know, it leaves a corpse, and you can collect that corpse, and it's represented by a graphic, and it, in the case of the spider, as opposed to, you know, the other two, it really resembles the spider. You know, the hog, it's just, it's like backplate thing that it has, you know, it looks like a little carapace. And the spitter is a little rolled up meat thing with some, you know, like veiny bit string around it. You know, it's meat. This is very clearly a spider corpse. Do they change the graphic of the spider corpse? No, they leave the spider corpse in. So you haven't actually removed the spiders from the game. You've just made them cats for the time when they're active and moving, and introduced that problem, when you could have also just, like, made them the meat that the spitter is. No one would care. It could just be a generic meat icon. But, I'm so... And I know, well, there's another issue of you need to differentiate between that meat and the other meat for the purposes of the recipes, but no one gives a fucking shit. Change the color. Like, I'm irrationally upset about this.
No, it's not irrational. So many video games that have arachnophobia modes in them, the dev teams have maybe heard people have arachnophobia and maybe we should have a mode for that. And so many times it feels like they have not stopped to ask someone with arachnophobia what would be helpful, or to think about the practicalities of what they're doing. The one, like, slight diversion, the one that annoys me the most is so frequently companies will have a trailer to announce that they have an arachnophobia mode in their game, and will show big-ass fucking spiders in the arachnophobia mode trailer.
Fucking dumb.
Like, shit like that. And, like, I
think this speaks to people that are putting these options in not because they care about the accessibility. I'm not saying they don't care about accessibility full stop, but it's motivated by, oh, there's this cute thing that's trendy. Let's see what funny, wacky thing we can replace our spiders with. And that's what it becomes an exercise in, not making the game more palatable to... Not that they don't want arachnophobes to play the game, but that becomes a secondary concern next to... How can we get in the headlines for this? How can our arachnophobia mode be a fun gimmick?
We want to get news coverage because we replace spiders with the word spider.
Yeah.
For example. Which, honestly, not a bad solution, that one. But, like, it's... There are best practices and ones that people agree currently exist and are the better options that are available. But it feels like innovation where innovation doesn't need to exist sometimes.
Yep. But anyways, other than that, I'm finishing my nuclear power plant this week, and I'm very excited to have that and to deal with nuclear waste. Yeah.
What about you, Steph? What you been playing?
Played a couple things. I know we've both played Indiana Jones and the Great Circle.
Yeah.
Does he what's so great about it? The Circle, the game's quite good.
I will caveat up front. I've been playing this game since it came out a bit, but I also did some mock review work on it before it came out, so I will probably be quite light with my thoughts on this one.
Sure.
I'll share a little bit, but yeah.
I quite like it, I'm very fond of it. I will say that much. I don't necessarily think it is a masterpiece. Like, I know some people have been absolutely in love with it, and that's great. For me, I am very, very much enjoying it. I do have some big criticisms. Most of that is to do with the user interface. I think the control scheme is a bit of a mess. The UI is horrible, and the map isn't much better. It's gone very much style over substance and usability. And, let's make... what should be a simple drop-down menu involve lots of pushing left and right, because then it will feel like Indy's looking through a book, won't it? I hate that shit. The only other big complaint I have is NPCs. They do that thing that happens in some games where an NPC will tell you to do something, and if you don't do it immediately, they will repeat over and over again from like a stock of 3 phrases. Do it, do it, do it, do it. Even if you're in a room with stuff to find. So you've been encouraged to explore, but the game is berating you for not following them along their linear path immediately. And it's like particularly bad in this one. However, that's about it for critique, because... And it feels almost obligatory to the point where it's a bit kind of tired and gauche to bring it up, but it doesn't get old bonking fascists on the head. It really don't. You can bash them on the back of the head with a shovel. You can bash them on the back of the head with a crowbar. You can bash them on the back of the head with a skillet, washed or used. You can bash them on the back of the head with a bell. That's one of my favourites. I like bells. I keep one with me at all times. I mean, that one's a small finger bell. It's not going to do much damage to a Nazi. The ones in Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, it should be called Indiana Jones and the Great Bells that smack Nazis. I enjoy it.
How far in are you, out of curiosity?
I am in Giza. I have done the little intro bit, and then I have done the first sort of big area, and then I'm on the second big area, which I would compare to sort of Deus Ex. In terms of structure, this game has a very Deus Ex sort of vibe going on, where it's not open world, it's not big enough for that, and I don't mind that at all. It's sort of a big hub. You get like a bit of a city, and there are lots of like things to find in there and little hostile areas to navigate through and stuff like that, with a bunch of side quests. Like, I spent hours in the Vatican area.
Yeah.
And it does one of those things I like where, and yes, listeners, this is different from backtracking, because I know some people have tried to bloody call this out before. This is different. First of all, because it is a smaller, more easy to navigate world, and you're doing fresh things in it. And that's what I like. Like Yakuza, or indeed the Deus Ex games, I love a game that can maximize its space. I love a game that can give you a smaller but densely packed hub to explore. And this has that going for it. The gameplay's good. Really smooth sort of stealth with some combat. The first-person hand-to-hand is not bad. Not bad. Not the best first-person melee I've played, but far from the worst. It's like rock solid. The stealth is really simple, but I think that works in this game's favour. I think it gives it a breezy feel, and I like that.
So, here's, like, my big picture thoughts on it. I agree with you in as much as this game is at its best when you are having kind of a nonsense time beating up Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
Like, early on, right near the start of the game, there was a moment where I picked up an acoustic guitar, smacked a Nazi between the legs in the balls with this acoustic guitar, and it goes and makes quite a loud noise, and this Nazi collapses to the floor. And then a little pop-up appears, because it's early in the game, saying, "Congratulations on your first stealth kill." I was like, yeah, that was a stealth takedown right there with a very loud acoustic guitar. Thank you very much, game. Bonk. Taking something that makes a satisfying bonk sound and hitting a Nazi over the head with it and it going bonk and the Nazi goes down never isn't satisfying. I will say that my issues with the stealth and with the hand-to-hand melee combat come as the game progresses. I found as it went further in that the stealth got more unforgiving, and that there became more instances of lengthy hand-to-hand combat sequences with a single enemy, and that those were not as enjoyable, and that some of the game's polish felt like it dropped off a little as it went. My other quibble with it is structural. The big open areas, the more the game goes on, particularly as you get more into the narrative, like the narrative starts to pick up pace, they can feel like they are antithetical to, we're racing to this place and we've got to get there right now before the bad guy gets there. We've got to get there. Anyway, we do need to buy this thing and it's going to cost €700. Go do some side quests and find money to buy it. That's going to take you about 3 hours. Hopefully the villain doesn't get there in that 3 hours. It's a little dissonant in places like that.
I get you. I would agree with that. It's got a kind of... Its pacing is off, for sure.
Yeah. And, like, it undoubtedly captures the vibe and the tone of an Indiana Jones film very, very well in its more linear, crafted segments. Like, I don't think it needed to open with Raiders of the Lost Ark, because I think even when it's doing its own new stuff, it very much looks and feels and sounds the way you expect an Indiana Jones story to do.
Yeah.
Certain elements stretched a bit thin for me the longer I played it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. I do feel like I might get kind of worn out on what it's doing, like, before it's over.
Yeah.
It might be one of those games where I, like, just sort of stop, and with no hard feelings.
Yeah, there's not a lot of mechanical growth.
No.
As you get further.
Yeah.
What happens is more enemies are everywhere, and it's harder to sneak, and if you get seen, there's more things you need to deal with, but you're doing the same things, and mechanically that didn't feel good for me, as long as I would have wanted it to.
Yeah.
But I am still hitting Nazis over the head, and for every time I'm a little quibbly about it, I'll then get to a action set piece moment and go, oh, this is actually pretty fucking cool again.
Yeah, and I think, even even with what I've said, I can think of moments that evoke what you've brought up there, where there are bits where I'm a bit like, well, it's kind of slowed down, and it's not pepping itself with anything new or particularly different. But as a baseline experience, I've been enjoying it quite a lot.
Yeah. It is a game that I had some problems with, but that I do think has some very enjoyable stuff in it.
I will say, and this goes back to sort of my issues, it's one of my many issues with the user interface. If you buy a map with collectibles on it, don't make me have to track that quest to have them on my map in real time to the exclusion of any other quest. Feeling like I've got to either do one thing at a time or constantly check a really badly designed quest log. It's not great.
Playing this not that long after having played the Silent Hill 2 remake made me really appreciate Silent Hill 2's map.
Yeah.
For maps that are like fundamentally quite similar in how they are a tangible map that you're sort of making notes on and physically holding in the real world, this does not compare to that one.
Yeah. The quest log as well, like it's... You can't like jump to categories, and they're all in one long, small column on the side. And I've seen quests like complete and not go anywhere else, but just stay in their place in the drop-down list with a tick next to them, just cluttering it up.
Yeah.
Really bad UI, and really some of the controls, for what is a fairly straightforward like game, they've made the controls weird and unintuitive in places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Games that I've been chugging along with playing for a while, I finally got back to putting some proper time into Metaphor Refantazio this week, after getting sidetracked with all sorts of other new releases during the last month or so. Metaphor Refantazio. That game is, like, wonky and janky and has, like, some moments of not being paced great and some moments where, like, you know, particularly dungeons can drag out and feel like you're not necessarily given the tools you would want to do them in a single sitting. Like, I have some problems with it as a game. But every time I dive further into it, I'm really enamored by this game's mix of aesthetic and narrative themes. Those, I think, this game is really hitting the nail on the head with really well. I would guess I'm maybe 80% of the way through the game now, and I am still not over the novelty of fight through a dungeon and go fight a Hieronymus Bosch painting, and then come out of that and let's have like an hour and a half of side quests talking about how if you're a religion and you perhaps wanted to make it difficult for another religion to assert its authenticity, going around and rounding up and destroying religious relics and artifacts might make it easier for you to argue that that religion has no history and is therefore less authentic than yours. Or maybe going on a plot thread about how whether an attempted political assassination is or is not successful, it will either way have ramifications that will undoubtedly spiral beyond what you could have accounted for, and that you need to be okay with that if you are going to attempt, even if you are not successful, that kind of high-stakes assassination, through to conversations about how in many elections, religion and the military are the two driving forces that are often used to fearmonger people into voting decisions. I continue to be, like, really impressed that this game is avoiding just being it's racism, but there's cat people. As I had feared it could, as these things often do, it continues to elevate itself above what if racism but against the people with cat ears. There was a whole little side quest I had this week, continuing the thread of side quests about little child coming to terms with the fact that homelessness exists in the world, having to have a conversation in-game with a child about why a homeless person that she wants to go give food to might be distrusting of her and not instantly willing to trust that she is being authentic in her desire to help, and that a homeless person perhaps being a little cautious isn't a reflection on you, it is a reflection on the fact that there's some pretty scummy people out there in the world, unfortunately. Shit like this, I'm like, cool, now let me fight an egg with a little family of mice living in it with a pair of human legs and a dagger stabbed into it, and that's a boss fight. It's a pretty good game. I'm looking forward to finishing it. It's a pretty damn good game. For all of its kind of wonky pacing in places. Either of you played anything else this week?
Yeah, I played, so early this year, I played a game called Home Safety Hotline, which was a game where you are taking calls from people who are experiencing, household issues, and you have to identify which household issue they're having based on their description, and then that allows you to have provided them the correct information to resolve the problem. And then it gets creepy, and cryptids are involved, and progressively you get more and more of these cryptids, and some of them are similar, and you have to really drill down and make sure you're parsing what they're saying correctly to send the right information. You send the wrong information, you get horrifying outcomes in terms of them calling back later. It's a really well-constructed game that I liked a lot. And they have released for the holiday season a standalone DLC called Home Safety Hotline Seasonal Worker Edition. And so I played that. And it's a mixed bag. It's a shorter game, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But it is one of those situations where it's contingent on you having played Home Safety Hotline to a certain extent, despite being a standalone product, which is not ideal. Part of the progression in Home Safety Hotline is slowly unlocking the codex that tells you all of the horrifying creatures and so forth. And that means you start with a fairly limited set of options to choose from, and over time it increases to become unmanageable. In Seasonal Worker Edition, a lot of the old stuff is in the codex and already unlocked, because you are coming at it from a perspective of playing a character who has done this before. It's even explicitly stated. So it makes sense within the lore that the character you're playing would have access to this information. But at the same time, if you are just coming to it for the first time, or let's say there's been a 10-month gap since you last played it, this is a very text-heavy game. And there is a lot to all of a sudden be expected to track and remember within that to solve what is the start of the game. It really throws you in hard, and that's not ideal. That said, it does have some things that I really, really like about it. The new entries in the codex are creepy and good SCP type stuff that I enjoyed. There is, in the main plot of the game, centers around a very clear looming threat that works very well in its application. And there's a really good little subplot about a member of the team who is, part of the pest control division that is out in the field trying to capture one of these cryptids that sort of progresses throughout, which is very entertaining. And the music is great. The hold music in the game is fantastic because every day of the story has a different one, and they're all, remixed holiday standards that are quite delightful in how they're done. And I really, really liked that. It's not a bad little package. It's like $8 on itch, and I did enjoy it, but it it does come with that baggage, and it's one of those things where if you're gonna play it, I would almost say play Home Safety Hotline right before, just so it doesn't have that sort of cold splash of water effect on you. But it was good, and I liked it.
Neat. You played anything else, Steph?
Yeah. I've played it, and I'm drafting doing my final draft on my review now, and I'm still surprised that The Thing got a remaster. So we talked about this on Podquisition about 2 years back, where I emulated the PS2 version of The Thing on my Steam Deck. Because I'm a huge fan of The Thing, and I never actually played that one. I never got round to it. And it's sure is a game. A squad-adjacent shooter where it was doing some it was doing some clever stuff for the time. With, having a squad that had their own sanity meters, basically. And you had to, keep them away from gory things or stress situations and sort of stop them freaking out. And some of that was, a little ahead of its time. And other parts of it was just a big janky mess. And the game lies to you frequently by having these blood tests that tell you that your allies are humans, and then because some of the thing transformations are scripted, the game would override that. Utter horseshit. It is a game I still have some fondness for, and all of that, but it's not a great game. And I can only assume people at Night Dive, who did the remaster, there must be some massive fans on staff, not just because they did this, but because they went above and beyond the call of sanity to try and make the game okay. They didn't just do a bog standard remaster on this. If we were to look at how it was remastered and not what was remastered, this would be Game of the Year. That's how dedicated they were. Unfortunately, what they remastered was The Thing from 2002. So, no, it's not Game of the Year. But they did what they could to improve everything without doing a full-on remake. This is one of the biggest examples in gaming of a team doing the best they could with what they had. They tried their best to stop the game lying to you. Unfortunately, the compromise has led to a situation where I can't tell the difference, and I thought they hadn't done anything.
Oh.
So what they've done is, there is no longer as near as I can tell, there are no longer scripted thingings that will override your results. However, NPCs can more easily become infected in real time. So functionally, I can do a blood test on someone, and then the next thing I know, they've turned into a thing, and I feel like the blood test was useless, which was the problem the first game had. That's at least been my experience with it. Every time I've tested someone, it's almost seemed like a guarantee that within 5 minutes, I'm going to have to fight them as a thing. So, whatever they've done, I fully 100% believe they did their best, and that some things just can't be fixed. However, on top of that, they have added an entire third-person aiming mode to deal with the fact that otherwise it's a third-person game that you can't fight with unless you are in first-person mode with a really janky, inaccurate first-person aiming control system. They still have the first-person if you want it, but you can just hip-fire, basically. And they've added an aim assist that I find, especially with like Joy-Cons, playing it on the Switch, I find the aim assist invaluable because on high, it is super generous. And I think it's made the game so much more playable because the aiming in that game was never great, and most of the enemies are small, skittering, running around, crapshooty things. So having a really generous aim assist, I think, is a massive improvement. They've added new lighting. They've not just sort of upscaled the graphics. They've added more detail. They've added more lighting. Again, they did the best they could because it still doesn't look great, even for its time. But you see a side-by-side, it is significantly better. The other thing they've done, which I find really interesting, is they've gone into the code to find monster models that weren't used, and they've brought them back in so that there's more visual enemy variety. And they've done like all sorts of little things like that, where they've just dug into this game's code. They've dug into the game as deep as they can to bring out the very best in it. It is sad that this is the best the game could have ever been, but this is the best the game could have ever been. And the respect I have for the work they've done is immense. I'm worried about their minds.
Their choices?
Yeah, their life choices that they dedicated so much to this. But I do appreciate it. You know, I could shit on the thing all day long. The game, not the film. I love the film. But I do also recognise that it's got a lot of janky charm, and I can see how enough people could get together and make it a passion project to try and fix it up. And they certainly did that. And I am impressed with the work they've done. And the game itself is still cute in its own messy, janky way. And I've gained a fresh appreciation for the tutorial boxes, which I don't think I mentioned last time. The game's tutorial is one of the biggest examples of self-aggrandizement I've ever seen in or out of games, where it will tell you that your squad mates are human. It doesn't just say like they've got advanced AI or they act like human. No, they're humans. That's how good they are. To the point where it dresses stuff up, like characters will shift on their feet if they're bored. Mate, you've just described idle animations. You're trying to pass off idle animations as an AI advancement. I respect the hustle.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah. That is, yep.
I am charmed by how disingenuous the game's own tutorials are when it sort of tells you how advanced everything is. It did get it some criticism at the time. Like, people were like, this game it's got some neat ideas, but it is pretending to be so much more clever than it is.
It is really, like, you know, for its time, forward thinking. In terms of how artificial intelligence would continue to be marketed.
Well, yeah. And I'll say this as well to the game's credit. A lot of modern games could stand to learn a thing or two about the combat competence of the AI allies in this game. Only the combat competence, because they don't understand how flights of stairs work. But put a gun in their hand, and they suddenly go from the Goombas in the live-action Mario to John fucking Wick. They're really fucking good at it. To the point where, like, you have to give your guns to some allies to get them to trust you enough to follow you. In fact, it's the only way to do it, because the game is not as clever as it pretends to be. It's a simple case of, if this character doesn't follow you, give them one of your guns and some ammo. But in the early stages, you could end up being like, do I want this person to come with me, or do I want to keep a gun to defend myself? And the answer is, give that cunt a gun. Because you won't need to defend yourself, because he will have your back. And for a 2002 game, compared to modern games, I'm impressed by how dependable the AI is when it comes to, specifically to combat. I have rarely seen characters that can hold their own like this. And then you've got like some characters are medics and they will autonomously heal your party members and you. If you stay still after a fight, no matter how much health you have, they will fix you up. And they won't need to be asked. And they're crack shots and they're responsive, and there have been times where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to sit back and let them do it because I'm just wasting my ammo. Which some people might find a little handholdy. And one thing this game has added are difficulty settings. And also just difficulty balancing. Because the original game had no balancing whatsoever, and there were huge difficulty spikes so bad you could run out of resources and get completely soft-locked. And the game still has issues. Like I say, they can only do so much without completely remaking it. But they did the next best thing. I feel like there were people at Night Dive who wanted a remake of this game, couldn't get it, and did the next best thing. So yeah, if you've got any fondness for it, they have come up with pretty much the definitive way to play it. If you want to. Yeah, honestly, fantastic work on a janky but charming game.
Cool. We've got a couple of little newsy bits before we finish up this week. Nothing particularly in depth. We continue having reports of Ubisoft trying to get bought out. According to Reuters, Tencent are deep in talks with Ubisoft to purchase up a controlling percentage in Ubisoft and take them from being a publicly traded company to a privately owned one. It does not sound like most of the Guillermo family would be leaving. It seems like they would be sticking around post-acquisition. But yeah, yet more of the big players in the industry shrinking together and consolidating into even fewer names. That just seems to be the flavour of the day still.
Oh yeah. We'll just see it happen more and more. Like, it's just...
Yeah.
They've seen some of the acquisitions that have happened in games already, and they've seen what's happened in the movie industry, and there's no way executives don't want those paydays.
Yeah. And the other story we got this week, which is Ubisoft related as well. You know how Beyond Good and Evil 2 got announced? There was a trailer for it at E3 2018, and now it's 6 years later and we've heard nothing of it since. Despite the fact it's apparently still in development. Well, we've got a little bit of gossip as to why we've seen nothing of it in 6 years. Surprise, surprise, management cannot decide what they want that game to be. The game that was a sequel to a linear, story-based action-adventure game, and the sequel was shown to be some kind of procedurally generated open-world adventure with assets created by fans for no money inserted into the game world. Apparently, the big creative team at the top of that game involved an art director who wanted to, in Michel Ancel's words, redo everything over and over, a director who wanted the game to be full of generated dungeons, and Michel Ancel dreamed of a space adventure, which I'm guessing means he wanted it to be more like the first one. And apparently the war between, I don't like all these assets we've made for our infinitely large game full of too many assets, person who wants automatically generated dungeon content and person who wants authored, more linear content, cannot agree with each other, and that game, it's never gonna fucking come out.
Nope.
It's never going to happen. And if it does, it sounds like exactly the kind of game that spends a decade in development hell and comes out and you play it and go, yeah, I can feel that this spent a decade not knowing what it wanted to be.
Maybe if they have new ownership, they'll take a look at this boondoggle and just feel like, no, fuck it, this ain't worth it. The game didn't sell that well. At any time. It's never sold well. I love the game, but it's never sold well.
In the run-up to that E3 where it got re-announced, I was the person on Podquisition in, the first, 4 years of the show, when every time E3 came around, I was going, Ubisoft, where the fuck is Beyond Good and Evil 2? Give me Beyond Good and Evil 2. It was a thing, annually. I was the person on the show going, where is my sequel to maybe my favourite video game of all time? And then they showed some gameplay that first year, and I went, oh. And even if not for all the bullshit that went on with Ubisoft leadership, they showed it once and I lost all interest for it as maybe the most passionate, holding on hope person they could have been. I don't know who this new version is for, and apparently neither do they.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I've talked with increased occurrences on the Jimquisition about the ineptitude of video game leadership. This industry's highest paid managers and thought leaders, and just how incompetent they are, and how anyone who knows anything about video games could run the business better than them. And I'm not just saying that the way people braggadociously say it. I'm saying executives are thick-headed and morons, and anyone listening to this right now could run the business better than them. And we get so many examples of them being completely out of touch and not knowing what to do with things. And I think nothing speaks to how overpaid executives are more than here is a sequel to a game, what should that be then? If you've already made one, why are you looking everywhere except that for an example of what it might be like?
Yeah.
Well, because if we're honest, it's never sold well.
Yeah.
I know the game never sold well.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
in that case, don't make a fucking sequel to it.
Yes.
And the thing is, again, we can talk about how over fucking paid they are. It's not because the game wasn't an open world procedurally generated game that it didn't sell well. There are many factors that went into it. I'm willing to bet poor fucking marketing was a big part of it. Why are you making a game if you don't know what you're making? This is what happened to Anthem. This is exactly what happened to Anthem. They didn't have an idea for a game. They had a name, and they had other games they wanted to copy the success of, and that was it. You can't announce that you're making a game. Well, I mean, obviously they can. They do it all the time. But you shouldn't announce a game if you don't even know what it is.
Yeah. You should not be 6 years into a game's development arguing over fundamentally what the game will be.
Literally anyone could be a game director if that's what it took. I'm a game director. I have ideas of a plan.
I'll tell you that they're bad ideas and that we should do something else,
Yeah.
and we'll never agree between the two of us. Now we're both game directors.
Jesus Christ.
That's it. We done the news. We done it.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, right? Ubisoft might not know how to make a video game like the video game they made. But Laurie, you know how to make all sorts of stuff and create it and put it on the internet and in bookshops and stuff. And can we know about it, please?
Well, you can find all the stuff I do at Laura K. Buzz pretty much everywhere that you might find people doing stuff. Probably by the end of this week, I will have up on YouTube, probably this Friday, a recap of everything that happened in video game accessibility in 2024. If you want like 35 to 40 minutes of every noteworthy video game accessibility thing that happened in a year, just speed run, that's the thing you can check out. That'll be up on Friday. I've got a little mini-series coming in the new year that people should keep an eye out for. I won't say who I'm co-hosting it with yet, but a series about how to make board games accessible, particularly aimed at people who might be thinking of designing board games. I'm working on a little mini-series with someone that I'm pretty excited about, so look forward to that in the new year. Just Laura K. Buzz, you'll find all the stuff I'm doing. What about you, Conrad? Where are you out on the internet?
Oh, you can find me at Conrad Zimmerman on Instagram and Blue Sky, and you can hang out with me on Twitch at twitch.tv/thatconradzimmerman. I'm on Sundays, Mondays, Tuesdays. I'm playing a lot of Spelunky, UFO 50. Come hang out. It's a chill time. You can buy anti-capitalist propaganda and Jimquisition merchandise at mercenarycreative.com. And everything I do online gets supported through Patreon at patreon.com/fistshark. And you know who else has a Patreon? Stephanie Sterling.
That's true. Patreon.com/Jimquisition will get you there, which supports this show and it supports the Jimquisition, which I normally just sort of take it as read that you either watch that show or don't these days. But if you have not watched the Jimquisition this week, I urge you to. It is probably the most personally important video I've ever done. It has already made a lot of people cry, which I wasn't actually expecting, but there you go. It did do what I hoped, which was made a lot of people feel seen. It's called I Hope This Hurts, Mouthwashing Through a Disabled Lens. It's about the game mouthwashing, which we've talked about on this show, and what it means to me as a disabled chronic pain sufferer who finds elements of that game uniquely horrifying, like truly chilling. And yeah, it's been very well received, and thank you to everyone who watched that and reached out to me with some stories that will frankly keep me awake at night.
That video sure did prompt me to have some conversations with you about stuff it made me think about.
And yeah, like, honestly, like, even though I now get to shoulder everybody's burdens,
Woo!
So really, I'm the only one who's ever suffered in the world. No, like seriously, thank you all so much. You've all shared a lot of like really nice stuff and kind words about the video, and yeah, so do check that out. I also do reviews on the Jimquisition.com. Check that out. We've got one up at the moment for something that I've forgotten. Oh, Death of the Reprobate, and I should have one for The Thing soon. And I also stream at Twitch TV/Jim Sterling. Blue Sky is Commander Sterling, and my next wrestling date is this Saturday, December 15th. Manchester. It's definitely Saturday. Pinfall Pro Wrestling. Look up Pinfall Pro on social media to get details for that. And that is that. Thank you all so much for listening to this and all of the support. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.